Good evening. Welcome to the March 9th, 2022 Planning Commission meeting. Call the meeting to order. All members are present. Pledge of allegiance, gentlemen.
Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Change over the wheels. Introduction of staff, Jerome.
Jerome Fournier, Director of Planning and Development.
Sean Chiro, Engineering Review Agency.
Eric Poche, Senior Planner.
Lance Brock, Zoning Official.
Ricky Compton, Director of Planning and Facility Management.
Secretary for the Planning Commission.
Spencer Long, Parish Attorney.
Thank you. Chairman has no comments. First order of business is we need to amend the agenda to add item 12B2, section 17-506.2 Wetlands Preservation. The packet is being distributed to you. Do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Chason, second by by Commissioner Furman. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. We'll do this item at the end, at the last item after B7. All right. Staff report?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to announce on behalf of the parish president that there are going to be 3 workshops being held next week to discuss the Unified Land Development Code. The first workshop is going to be Monday, March 14th from 6 to 8 p.m. That's going to be held at Oak Grove Community Center up in Prairieville. The second is going to be Tuesday, March 15th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Ascension Parish Administration Building next door. All right. And the third and final workshop is going to be held Wednesday, March 16th, 6 to 8 p.m. at the Ascension Parish Courthouse in Donaldsonville. All right, and so we're going to be making a presentation on the modification to the ULDC, all the items that you guys have been considering here, and both the first batch and the second batch. All right, so we encourage everybody to attend if they have an interest in what's going on here. Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Mr. Poche, who'll give it.
All right, thank you, Jerome. Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, you have in front of you normal subdivision report for March 2022. The only change from last month is that a pre-construction meeting was held for Belmazon subdivision, which is off of William Ficklin Road, last week. If anyone has any questions on anything, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Mr. Poche. Engineering staff report, anything else from you guys? Nothing? All right, I need approval for the minutes. Any motion?
So moved.
So moved by Commissioner Furman, second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Consent agenda. Item number 10A, affidavit mortgage declaration, Gerard Cryer, Lot B2A, 42143 Cluart Road, Gonzales, Louisiana. Item 10B, final plat approval, Hidden Lake, second filing, Quality Engineering Surveying, LLC, Council District 5 and 6. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Furman, second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. Do I have a vote? Any ayes?
Aye. Aye.
Any noes? Motion carries. Next item, 11A, public hearing to approve or deny the family partition, Keela Thompson property, tracks A1, A2, and A3. Anybody here to speak?
Hello, I'm Curtis Cheney with Louisiana Land Surveying. I'm representing Ms. Artella on this resub, family partition.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, this was submitted to us with a completed application before the moratorium went into effect. There were some title issues that were discovered. and that's why it has been held off this long. The only change that the applicant is asking is, if you can see on what is the eastern property line, there's an existing 10-foot drainage servitude. They're asking that the 30-foot private access servitude, that the utility servitude be combined or be within the 30-foot private access servitude. But the map has been checked, revised, and we have no comments on it, and it does meet the family partition section of the code.
But right now, the 10-foot drainage servitude and the 30-foot is separate, and you're saying that they want to change that and combine them?
Well, the drainage servitude all the way against the property line on the east. Because of that, they didn't want to come into the property anymore if it could be avoided, so they wanted to include the required utility servitude within the 30-foot servitude of passage.
All right. Staff doesn't have any objection to that?
No, I think they've got plenty enough room to do what they need to do.
Right. Anybody here to speak on this matter from the public? Hearing not, the public, hearing is closed. Do I have a comment or motion from the commission?
I motion to approve. I'll second.
I have a motion by Commissioner Schick-Snyder to approve, and Commissioner Chason seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. All right, next item is, we're going to do these like we did at the last month. We're going to do them one at a time, just for simplicity, so we can stay focused. Attached with your packet, there was a series of red lines that was distributed to you, or rather done at the late hour. So we're going to start with item number 12A1, section 174044 drainage requirements.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we have our consultant, Targov, who is online with us like he did last meeting.
Right.
So if we could get Tark up, he's going to give us a presentation, and he has comments to make on each of the items, all right?
It'd be great if you just would focus on one at a time, so that'd be great.
That'd be good, yes.
Okay. Chart, it's all yours.
He's muted. No, I think it's on his end, he's muted. See the red? You tell him to unmute his microphone.
You need to unmute your mic.
Can everybody hear me?
Staff, we can't hear.
How about now?
Yes, now we can.
Okay, everybody can hear me. Good. Great. I will be efficient with our time, and we will switch things up as compared to last time and reserve plenty of time for questions on each of these items. So I'm not going to run through the full presentation. Here is a snapshot of what will be included in our entire discussion tonight. You also have these packets as part of your Planning Commission preparation materials. Mr. Chairman, I heard you mention that you would like to handle wetland preservation at the end. So when we get to that, I will skip past until that is an appropriate time to get to that issue. So please make sure that I follow that essential protocol.
You got it.
Again, just some general housekeeping updates, things that we will not cover tonight. I've really focused on the major issues. We've tightened a lot of the language and been consistent with names and titles of individuals and their roles within the parish. We have been concise where the code is currently very verbose and activated a lot of language that was currently passive. So we made a lot of those changes when time allowed, knowing that we're under the gun here with the moratorium. And the first item is the drainage requirements, section 17-4044. Two major changes in this section. One is to revise the section to prohibit open ditches, channels, and swales, and rear yards for major subdivisions. You have existing subdivisions that have open ditches, channels, and swales. And for those to be modified, they would have to be first approved by the Ascension Parish Department of Public Works, of course, and the language states exactly that. We are requiring that rear yard drainage improvements be privately owned and maintained so that there is not a dependence on the parish to act within private yards to be able to ensure the proper conveyance of stormwater during an event. So there's a lot of red in this section of code, but these are the two major changes. Now you'll see in the blue highlighted section at the bottom of the slide here are the additional suggested edits that were part of the errata sheet that you should have received earlier today. And so I'll just walk through those. In addition to what was proposed in your original packet, we have proposed that in paragraph A, we've clarified that acceptable existing drainage artery will be as determined by the parish engineer. So today that language is very vague. It just says acceptable drainage artery. It does not give a lot of guidance on who is making that determination. So we have added that qualifier. Additionally, paragraph B, making a change to add language for continual maintenance and clearing of drainage facilities on both the subject property for the new proposed subdivision or on adjacent properties. And this would be determined during a pre-application process, much like it is today. The code does not exactly state it that way, but Ron and his team during the pre-application procedure would determine which of the arteries would be necessary for continual maintenance, which of those surrounding arteries would have to be cleared prior to development activities taking place. The final errata change for this section is paragraph J, to clarify the language for requirements to convert any existing open ditch subdivisions to put pipes underground with additional improvements to the drainage facilities. That would have to be approved by the parish, and the streets within that subdivision would also have to be approved by the parish prior to transitioning an open ditch subdivision to a different type of drainage solution. So with that, I will turn it back to you for discussion.
Okay, well, I'll start on paragraph 17-4044. I believe that this will probably encourage developers to just slope the lot to the front, to the street. This would not preclude them from being able to do that.
That is correct, except that streets would have to be designed to properly convey the water.
Correct. Yeah, they would have to design the drainage system accordingly, but it would not preclude them from doing that. On 17-4044B, if I understood you right, the language that you're adding is you're simply codifying what we're currently doing in practice today, essentially.
Essentially, with some stronger language. So what we have qualified is that any existing drainage ditches, streams, drains, canals on the property or those adjacent properties, they're going to have to be maintained and potentially cleared prior to development activity. During our initial tours last fall, this was brought to our attention as a major problem, and it just has not been codified as such. It is a big issue that the Department of Public Works has asked for at the beginning of the development cycle.
How does a developer go out and clean a public ditch on a state highway? You know, I mean, that's a considerable amount of liability. You know, they're doing it on behalf of whom? The parish? They don't own it. The parish owns it. How's that going to work from a practical perspective?
Yeah, I'll give a short answer and turn it over to your staff engineers, but sometimes it will be parish-owned property. Sometimes they will be private servitudes and private drainage facilities on adjacent lands that need to be cleared and maintained. And so the specifics on how those are handled would largely be case by case. and I'll defer to staff for additional response.
Mr. Chairman, I think the idea here is that what we want to make sure is that we have a receiving stream that's accepting the water from an existing subdivision or a proposed subdivision that's adequate in its ability to handle the water coming off that subdivision, as well as water going through the subdivision and into that receiving stream. We have had instances in the past where those drainage features, the ditches, canals, whatever they may be, weren't maintained in the past. We're putting in new subdivisions that's going to be dumping more water into those areas for the most part. We want to make sure that they're maintained and absolutely cleared of debris before we allow that subdivision to move forward. Right.
I understood, staff, but my question is, on a public servitude that belongs to the parish, I can clearly understand the parish, saying, hey, we're going to require you to do this, and we're going to give you the permission to do it. But what if that drainage belongs to the state, or it's in private hands? The parish, can't give that person those access rights to go clear a ditch on private property. So how do you resolve that issue?
Mr. Chairman, the way I understand it is that the applicant or the developer would be required with whatever parish assistance to go and try to acquire servitude on those streams to do that. Obviously, there are going to be limitations to as far as legally what we can do, but to the greatest extent practicable, we would like to have receiving streams able to carry a certain volume of water cleared for ease of maintenance and servitude along those ditches whenever we can get it.
Wholeheartedly in favor of it. I'm worried about the mechanics of it. I mean, look, the intent is spot on, not a problem with intent. My concern is, how do you mechanically make this work? And to me, there's unless there's a mechanism where a developer gets to that point and the parish is unable to obtain that access for him, what does he do then?
That's right. I mean, like I said, there may be limitations to what we can do, because obviously we can't force a property owner to give servitude to maintain a ditch. It would obviously be in their best interest to do so, but there may be a point where we go as far as we can go.
Okay, well, I'm just raising the issue. I don't have an answer yet, but.
Mr. Chairman, if I might, we have used a term of art in that errata sheet, in that additional sentence where we have said they've got to be continually maintained, but they may be required, may being the key word there,
okay,
may be required by the parish engineer to be cleared prior to any new development activity. That level of ambiguity gives you the opportunity to discuss those specifics and mechanics of putting this into operation during the pre-application procedure. So that was an intentional move on our part to make sure that you could treat these on a case-by-case basis. It's not always going to be practicable, and in such cases, you would just not require that happen prior to development taking place.
Okay, well, thank you for that point. That's a good point. That's a valid point. The only other concern I have with this in the errata sheets is the on 174044.j, with all due respect, simple divisions and family partitions are all open ditch subdivisions, so why would we exclude them from this? What if at some day, the parishes the roads were improved and the ditches enclosed? So I would respectfully suggest that you not exclude them. They're all open ditches anyway, so they're going to remain open ditches. And the second provision of this code probably will never apply to them. So there's no need to exclude them. Okay, those are my only comments. Anybody else have any comments on this particular section of the code? Do I have a motion? Do I have any?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
The few comments I had, and this is mainly for staff, I'm asking, how do we, under these changes, how do we address, and Mr. Dumas actually kind of brought up this, but if you have an existing open ditch area and they have potential sewer issues, so if the houses in those areas are all 6 or 8 feet off the ground, and currently, right now, in order to get curb and gutter, you're going to have to bring that roadway up, that could potentially have issues for the sewer. Is that something that is being considered for this? Or are we going to keep the roadways down as well? For base flood elevation, terminology and all.
No, they are.
I mean, I don't,
They are designated.
maybe I'm missing the question, but
So
nothing I'm
it-
seeing here is changing anything regarding our minimum road elevations.
Okay, well, and that's just, I want to make sure that if we have to convert everything in, that's how I kind of understood it. We're going to try to eventually convert open ditch to potentially a curb and gutter. Are we keeping in mind, that's the way I understood it. So if I'm, incorrect, I just want to know. And that question is more for clarification.
Well, the biggest item as far as the way that paragraph is written is that when subdivisions are brought online and the roads are private, if the ditches are open, the intent is that they stay open in perpetuity.
Okay.
So the chances that somebody comes in and expends the funds to build a road to parish standards, put it to curb and gutter, have it approved by the parish, and keep in mind that it has to become part of an infrastructure development district. And
Okay.
every person on that street or in that subdivision has to agree to that 100%.
Okay.
And then if that's done and everything else follows through, then the parish council has to unanimously vote to accept it into the maintenance system. That would have to occur before any of this other stuff would occur, and the chances of that are very slim.
Okay. Thank you for clarifying that.
But with all due respect, Eric, the reality of it is that's true of simple division and family partitions as well. Everybody would have to agree, and the parish would have to agree to accept them.
That's exactly, now a
exactly
simple
same
division is
applicable.
gonna be on a parish road on an
Right.
existing right-of-way, and so they would, I mean, if simple divisions are normally contained on existing parish roads as well already.
Exactly.
Family partitions are not. If a family partition wanted to do this, and they would, in order for, because what you obviously want to try to avoid, or what you want to avoid is, you don't want to have public infrastructure in the right-of-way or the servitude of a private street. So if,
But again,
I agree, I see where you're going
it's just,
with the exclusion on it, so it's one of those things where, it's like you say, it would never really happen anyway, so why exclude them?
well, and let's go ahead and codify that they're going to stay as open ditches. They're nobody's going to go in there and change them.
I definitely agree with that. My other question I had is, and it's kind of backboning off of what Jerome was saying, if this is going for, I think, part 2, those extra, I guess, release points that we're talking about for drainage and such, coming off of a property, if the existing release points right now, those drainage points, if they're not able to handle, or if they're not handling undeveloped property, our rules basically say that whenever they develop it, when somebody develops it, they have to retain it and they have to release it at a certain rate of flow and all that. So in other words, it should be pre equals post. In this case, what we're kind of saying is that pre hasn't been equaling post, and we have to make sure that all these extra clearances are happening. Is that kind of what I'm understanding?
I think what we're looking at here is that typically when we see a raw piece of land, we're having a lot of sheet flow that's basically occurring onto sometimes neighboring properties, sometimes onto a ditch. Now we're funneling that water into a particular drainage feature. And we want to make sure that where that drainage feature discharges, it has adequate capacity downstream in order to handle what used to be maybe street flow. Okay.
So, but how far downstream are we, or do we have a particular, I mean, a mile, half a mile? I mean, or is it?
That is why we left some gray area, and we'll make that determination at the pre-app meeting through some engineering standards and looking at the engineering and what's being proposed. Obviously, a 25-unit subdivision is going to be much different than a 150-unit subdivision. So, we're going to make those determinations at the pre-app meeting.
Okay.
Much like we do with the transportation studies, in terms of going out to a certain intersection, we're going to be making the same determinations for the drainage study as well as, what's going to happen there.
Okay. And then my last comment was on Part J, where we're talking about having a unanimous vote of the parish governing authority. Is it too much that we're just going to have a simple majority or a super majority? We want to have it unanimous? Is there a reason behind that?
That's in the current ordinance
Okay.
right now.
Okay.
That's in the ordinance now.
Then that's fine.
Yeah.
That's all my comments. Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Chason, you had some questions?
I guess I'm just, no, I guess I'm just trying to figure out on the J about the excluding or not excluding the simple subdivisions and family partitions, and maybe I'm just not understanding it. But as I'm reading this, the purpose is, if you have an open ditch subdivision, is to basically keep it open ditch permanently, right? Unless they can meet these onerous qualifications. On the simple subdivisions and family partitions, are you wanting to just permanently keep them open, or are you wanting to give an individual lot owner the option to close the ditch in front of their house? I'm just trying to figure out so I know what to do.
Simple division, this is mostly being crafted and proposed to take care of subdivisions, major and minor subdivisions. That can happen to include simple subdivisions as well as family partitions. Simple subdivisions are done along existing public rights of way. We have language in place and we have permitting in place that allows for the closure of ditches on individual properties. And family partitions are always proposed on private servitudes of passage. So if they ever wanted to do any of that, they would have to, and have the parish take care of it, they would have to build a road to parish standards, and they would, you know what I mean? So then that would become more like a subdivision. I don't know, just off the top of my head, if there's a better way to say it or whether to include it or exclude it. I know what will more than likely happen in how it, but that's me. I mean,
And I guess that's what I'm trying to figure out. Just, I assume when this was drafted, it was drafted this way for a reason, and I understand what Chairman Dumas is saying about just taking that language out completely, so it would just say, new subdivisions designed as open ditch shall be designated as private, and then go from there. I guess I'm just trying to figure out the intent here. What's the parish?
in my
intended
estimation,
to do?
you're going to have the same result whether you have that statement in there or not.
All right.
But on the other hand, if a subdivision, regardless of whether it's a family partition or not, 5-lot subdivision, came to the parish and said, we're unanimous, we're willing to spend the money to enhance the drainage system, plumb it, okay?
Mhm.
And we would like to turn it over to you. Notwithstanding them agreeing to pay for it and do that, they would still have to go to the parish, and the parish
Yes.
council will have to unanimously agree to accept it.
They would have to go from a 30-foot servitude of passage to a 50-foot right-of-way. They'd have to
Right.
build the street to parish standards,
But-
so on and so forth.
But the good thing is that should they do that, it's a good thing for the public. Should they successfully do that, it's a good thing for the public. So, for me, giving them the opportunity to participate is a better route than not giving them the opportunity.
Mhm.
Whether they do it or not. Any other comments? Okay, do I have a motion? Do I have a recommended amendment?
I mean, do we want to, is that something that we want to feel strongly enough?
I feel strongly about it, yes.
Okay.
Then I'll make a motion to recommend the council, recommend approval to the council of 174044, I guess, as included in the packet, as also amended under the errata sheet, and then further amended by taking out under 1744J. Maybe, should we just do the amendment to do?
No, just do the whole thing.
To remove the language, the comma after ditch, excluding simple subdivisions and family partitions without curb and gutter, comma, so that J provision will now read, new subdivisions designed as, open quote, open ditch, close quote, shall be designated as, and then continuing on with the way it's currently identified in the errata sheet. Do you understand that? Do you understand?
I know where you are. I'll get it.
Excluding the boat. We need to do that. Okay,
Did I get that right? Is that what you wanted?
yeah, let me try to paraphrase this real quick. So we have a motion to recommend approval of item A1, section, amendments to section 17-4044 drainage requirements as revised per the errata sheet delivered to us, with the additional amendment to remove the language excluding simple divisions and family partitions without curb and gutter from section 17-4044.J. We have a motion by Commissioner Chazan. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. All in favor?
Question.
Oh, I have a question from,
I think you need to leave the term without curb and gutter, because that follows with subdivisions designed as open ditch, comma, without curb and gutter, comma, shall be designated as private and shall remain. So that little piece should stay.
thank you very much. That's a good catch. Appreciate that.
There's not a comma currently there, so I read there's not a comma currently there, so I read between the two commas as the one phrase.
Open ditch, comma. Yeah, excluding that without comma. All right, so you wanted to read designated as open ditch without curb and gutter, correct? All right, do you want to amend your motion?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, with the motion as amended, your second good? Second still sticks. Jack, did you get that? You got it? Okay, perfect. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. So next item is action, item number 82, 17-45 drainage design criteria.
Thank you, Chairman. And by the way, you all are masterful with your Robert's Rule of Order, so appreciate your attention to that. I know it can be difficult with errata. This one should be easier. So because you have current drainage design criteria, both in this section 17-4045 and in section 17-5013 in the drainage ordinance, we have suggested to remove the language from this section 4045 and relocate it to 5013 to be consistent. We have provided a cross-reference to that section for the time being. That could also be repealed at a later date with the full ULDC update.
Excellent, thank you very much. Any discussion?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the council to approve as change requested.
A second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Schick-Snyder and second by Commissioner Chazan. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item. Item number 12A3, section 174050.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. For servitude revocation, 174050, the major changes, this section was largely carried forward as is with some minor modifications just to clarify the language. We did add some new language towards the end of this section, both E and F, for revocation plat note requirements. These are current practice by Ascension Parish staff, and so we are codifying that practice by adding those notes to this section. We also removed a hold harmless section, which is currently paragraph C, that we understand, in effect, has allowed for an inconsistent application of the reduced servitude requirements and just allowed folks to not adhere to the standards. So we have removed that section as well, or that paragraph rather. And there are no errata proposed for this section.
All right, any comments or questions?
Otherwise, mainly just housekeeping.
How about motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we recommend approval to the council, 174050, as rewritten and suggested.
Second by, motion by Commissioner Schick-Snyder, second by Commissioner Furman. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next item, item 12A4, definitions.
Thank you, Chairman. Definitions, section 1740-100. The major changes here were to add several new definitions for maximum extent practicable, open ditch, and parish engineer. One of the biggest changes was that definition for parish engineer. Right now, your current drainage ordinance and all of these sections subject of tonight have a lot of different parties, individuals, agencies listed as decision makers, and that became confusing, overlapping, and inconsistent. So we have created a definition to include all of those entities and individual roles within that single definition, simplifying the ordinance by just calling it parish engineer throughout each section. We also relocated and copied the current definition of development from Appendix 4 subdivision regulations, which was not listed in the definitions, but was listed in part of the actual standards themselves. So we thought it would be a helpful addition. Maximum extent practicable is a lot different. That is a term of art that is a lot different than economically feasible, which will come up later in our discussion tonight.
All right. The only comment I have is that I'm glad we finally defined maximum extent practical because, that's always I used to refer that as the fluff paragraph. So anyway, with that, does anybody have any comments?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend approval to the council, 174010 definitions as suggested to us.
Motion by Commissioner Schick-Snyder, second by Commissioner Bernardo. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, I said it in Spanish, Barnado. 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 Well, okay, I need to read. I guess I need to learn French.
We're South Louisiana.
I'm in South Louisiana, not in Cuba. Okay, I apologize. My accent is my accent.
Oh, we had a new one that walked in.
Well, I got criticized for another word earlier today, so there you go. Okay, item number 12A5, attachment B, drainage study procedures.
Thank you, Chairman. Appendix 4, Attachment B, subject of the drainage impact study procedure. There were 4 major changes that I'd like to cover tonight. You've got them in your packet. The biggest one is the change for the design of drainage features from what is currently a 25-year storm event to a 50-year storm event. And so all of those drainage features would be designed to show now the 10, 25, 50-year, and 100-year event in the design so that they could detain the water appropriately. We've updated post-development requirements to detain 10% more than pre-development conditions. So as discussed, 20 minutes ago, are we keeping the standard the same for pre-development versus post-development? No, we're actually requiring design to detain 10% more than pre-development conditions. We've redrafted this procedure, which is currently, much like your traffic impact analysis procedure was written as a lengthy narrative and policy, we have codified this section to read more like standard code to match other sections of the ULDC. And then several other changes, as you see in the red lines, for consistency with the other provisions in the ULDC. I wanted to make sure we do not have any suggested changes in the errata sheet for the drainage impact study procedure as well.
I guess I'll, just out of curiosity, has anybody looked at a typical 20-acre subdivision and said the pond's going to, the retention pond is going to increase by 10%, 20%, 50%?
Yeah, you mean by, due to this change of from 25, from 25 to 50?
Well, not only 25 to 50, but also reducing the amount of discharge from pre to
Right.
post by 10%.
No, it wouldn't be a significant like footprint change. This isn't something, this automatically takes another 10% away from your property before. It all varies. Imagine if you have a deep outfall, it's a much lesser footprint impact. If you have a really shallow roadside ditch, this thing could require you to have a little increase more to the footprint. But considering that the previous design was always to account for an event of 100, including this little 50 plus a little extra, this is not going to be substantial of eating up any property.
Okay.
And remember that for ponds, sometimes if you're in a floodplain field mitigation area, that dictates your size more than the detention requirement. So, in my opinion, this is not a substantial change to the available buildable area from this increase right here.
Good, I appreciate that clarity. Thank you very much. Commissioner Schick-Snyder.
My biggest concern is, just a few years ago, we went from and please correct me if I'm wrong, we went from a 10-year detention to a 25-year detention. That was done within the past six or 7 years, right? So now we're going from a 25-year to a 50-year. And I'm wondering if, are we just reacting to something that, is this actually going to solve a problem? So we do have to be considerate that just because we're going from a 25-year to a 50-year, is this really going to solve something? Or is this just a feel-good, hey, we're doubling it because it's really that necessary? And I think that this might be considered a little excessive. Have we really seen the change? I mean, have any of these new subdivisions that we've seen over these past 6 years, did their 25-year storm detainage, did they fail? If they would have had 50-year storm, would it have, made a difference? And I'm just kind of curious as to all this.
I'll try a little bit there. This main change from the 50 to the 25. So remember, if you have when you say a 50-year event, so you pretty much got to wait till you have a 50-year event to start seeing some of the benefits. Right now, if you have a 25-year event type of rainfall, once you exceed that, the emergency weir on these ponds start kicking in. And you're really not required to detain anymore after that. So this change right here allows that. There have been moments when the rainfalls, we've hit some 25-year types of events just last year. So this adds that next level of protection that when we have an event greater than 25, we're still in detention mode rather than redirecting excess water through an emergency weir. So,
and I understand that, but
Right.
What I'm getting at is, sure, we could, and I'm going to be a little facetious, but let's just say we're going to force all these new developments to hold a 100-year, a 500-year event. At a certain point, what we're doing is we're asking something to be so onerous that it's excessive, and that's what I'm wondering. And it might be 25 years is excessive. It might be 50 years is excessive. And I'm just asking if we've had issues in the parish where these 25 years weren't enough, and what was the outcome? What was the effect of it? I understand the emergency weir takes over, but did houses flood? Did we have inundation on that or anything?
yeah, I'm aware of some, but I know Ron and others may be aware more, but there have been some newer subdivisions, where it wasn't a 10-year event where they were starting using the secondary weir. More of it had to do with the downstream impacts of that project, and this could have provided that next level protection. So some of it is the pond footprint wouldn't change so much, but it's designed in a way that should things downstream, a ditch get clogged up, it couldn't be maintained, a roadside ditch, or pumps are being drawn down, you're still in detention mode and much larger. But yes, there were a couple of projects that I'm aware of just in this past year that when we had some of the wettest year that we've had, those areas that took such a long time to draw down, if we had this one little extra thing, this little extra 50-year event, it could have held a little more water than what it was doing.
Okay. Thank you.
Commissioner Chason,
But-
if I may, please.
Yeah, go
I'd like to recognize Councilman Michael Mason, who has joined us tonight. Thank you very much, sir.
All right, mine, Tarek, is more of, I guess, a technical issue, and this it isn't really even a change, but if you look at F4, so you've got the 25, 50, 100, and then you've got and I know this is a couple other places in the code as well, you've got the corresponding inches, 7.8, 96, 9.6, and then it says insert 50-year, and then the 12.6 for the 100.
That's my fault. That number should have been filled in. That number is.
That's actually not
11.1.
even what I was going to comment on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's not even what I was going to comment on. I just figured maybe y'all were waiting to get it. That was actually not even my comment. So I know every so often the Corps or whoever it is who makes these determinations revises what constitutes a 10-year, a 25-year, or 50-year rainfall. So by putting in a number, if the revision is made and a 10-year is no longer 7.8 but now 8.4, you've got it like an inconsistency in the code. Would it be better from a technical standpoint to just say computations based on 10-year, 25-year, 50-year, and 100-year type 3 rainfall as determined by the most recent edition of, and wherever it is those numbers come from?
So I can respond. You addressed the question to me, so I'll respond and then defer to staff to add to it. My understanding is that we chose what should read as 11.1 inches for that 50-year rainfall based on DOT standards. Now, we could simply refer to DOT standards and then supplement that with NOAA standards as needed, and I think that would be a fine change. It's a good suggestion. I'll defer to staff to see if the mechanics of that would work sufficiently.
Yeah, I think one of the things that you're seeing, the numbers came from DOTD standards, which are much more conservative than the NOAA standards. That's why we put those in there. But I think your suggestion about referencing those and as a backup, we could have the NOAA standards be perfectly fine.
Yeah, or I'm just thinking, like, if the standard, even the DOT, if you get it from DOTD and the DOTD standard changes, we're locked into these 7.8, 9.6, 11 point whatever is supposed to be there, and then the 12.6, as opposed to just having something dynamic that as the we're referencing wherever the standard comes from, whatever that is, and I'll let y'all make that decision. But that way, when that standard changes, our code changes with it. Our code changes with it without us someone having to go in and physically make that change. I don't know what the appropriate language would be. I just think, and I know there's.
Let me try a shot at that.
Okay.
And staff, you let me know if this is acceptable. So after type 3 rainfall distribution producing totals of rainfall pursuant to current DOTD standards as may be amended from time to time.
That would be a really good change, but I would also supplement that by saying that if DOTD doesn't address our needs, we can use as a backup the NOAA standards, right? However you want to word that.
Pursuant to current DOTD standards as may be amended from time to time, or current NOAA standards.
Would you want to say whichever is greater?
No, I'm going to leave it up to the parish engineer to do that. What do you think, staff?
My recommendation, I'd be curious from Tarek's perspective, is the more that you have a document that refers to another document, knowing that we always have the ability to come back and change these should something substantially, there's a better tool than DOTD. My preference, especially as a reviewer, because even NOAA Atlas, you can click on different parts of the parish, you'll get slightly different numbers. And you waste a lot of time debating. It's a 7.82, 7.81, 7.69. These are good, perfect average numbers for what we're doing in Ascension Parish. My recommendation, which is nothing wrong the way you're going with the DOTD, is just, if we know what DOTD is, they only change it every 8 years. It's not, I'd rather just list, my preference is to go ahead and note the specific numbers in here, be crystal clear. And then should DOTD have a new hydraulic manual that comes out, or there's something better than Atlas 14 or something else or another tool, you would just go back and like a setting like this or a drainage board saying, based on this, let's all agree to adjust these totals. And at that time, there are some, it sounds greater, it sounds better, say let's design to and there's some pros and cons sometimes of designing something to a higher rainfall total than a lower rainfall total. So my recommendation, 7.8, 9.6, 11.1, and not even
12.6.
refer to the DOTD.
You know, in really, in true form, if the code is being managed properly, it's probably going to go through annual, or biannual amendments. So from time to time, this would be a cleanup amendment that you would do anyway.
Yes, plus keep in mind, DOTD, they do not, their whole manual does not focus on detention. They don't talk about detention. They're really just worried about getting water through culverts as fast as you can. Our ordinance is structured about storage, detention, much different. These numbers mean something different to us than what DOTD, when they would amend, they don't focus on those as much. Just think about, there's not many DOTD hydraulics detention ponds, road projects. It's more, make sure you're oversizing culverts.
Okay. All right. Any other comments from the commissioners? Okay, do we have a motion? You want to add the 11.1?
Yeah. So make a motion to recommend item 12.5A, attachment B, drainage impact study procedure to the parish council. Approval with the amendment of, in F4 where it says insert 50-year rainfall, we put 11.1.
Okay. Do I have a second? Second by Commissioner Barnado. Is that better? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. My wife would be proud of me. She's Cajun. All right. We're going to now go to item 12B, and I guess we'll open it to public hearing. Since we have a very large crowd here, we'll subsequently close the public hearing. So we'll start with item 12B1, section 17506, protecting of watersheds and conveyance systems.
Thank you, Chairman. No major changes to this section of the ordinance. Basically made changes to be consistent with the other standards, some of which we've already talked about tonight and some of which we will cover in later sections of the code. So we are just being internally consistent with the changes that were made in this section 17-506. And again, no additional modifications suggested in the errata sheet for this section.
All right. Any comments? Do I have a motion? Motion by Commissioner Chason, and second by Commissioner Shake Snyder. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
You'll get it right by next meeting.
I'm gonna have to take French classes by next meeting. All right.
Me too.
Item 12B2, section 17506.1, development in a floodplain.
Thank you, Chairman. Major changes here were updated the language to mirror the current practice. For example, by removing requirements to submit paper copies of plats, which everything, as you know, is done through the electronic parish application system. No other major changes to this section except for internal consistency, and no additional modifications proposed in the errata sheet.
All right, any comments from commissioners?
The only question I had is, do we have designated floodways in our parish? Do we have that planned yet?
They do not.
That's what I thought. do we have a plan for that, to start designating floodways?
My understanding with some of the work that's being done right now by H&TB on the master drainage plan and everything else, they are looking at that. I don't have a direct answer as to whether they're going to include that or not, but they are looking at that.
Okay. Thank you.
But that'll be a product that'll come in the future when, okay. Right?
Anybody else have a comment?
Anybody else have a comment?
Okay, then in that case, I recommend approval to the council for item 12B2, section 17506.1.
Okay, we have a motion by Chick Snyder and a second by Commissioner Furman. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 12B3, section 17507, placement of fill.
Thank you, Chairman. This was one of the biggest sticky issues that we knew we would have to deal with. And so there are several major changes here, most of them just clarifying the fill and excavation standards. And it's divided into three different types of development: individual lots, major and minor subdivisions, large-scale developments, townhouse subdivisions, condos, and PUDs, and then commercial lot development. So you'll see those different sections throughout your current ordinance in 17507. In each of those, we have clarified that the fill shall not exceed 36 inches on any individual lot. Right now, the average fill just says, average fill shall not exceed 36 inches. But as I saw with my own eyes, and as has been testament, sometimes you'll get a lot of fill on one end of a subdivision to make up for that, and it has created issues. So clarifying for individual lots, average fill shall not exceed 36 inches on an individual lot. For major and minor subdivisions, the same. Average fill shall not exceed 36 inches on any individual lot. And for commercial lot development, clarified that the average fill shall not exceed 36 inches, and that is across the entire commercial development. There were some other changes in here to just clean up the language. And I think you will see that a lot of those are fairly minor. So I've covered the major changes. I think we do have some errata changes proposed here too. And that is added a technical slope requirement to avoid shallow slopes. So 17507B2 says the side slope of fill under the structure shall not be steeper than a 3-foot horizontal to a 1-foot vertical slope. That's a great standard to prevent too steep of a slope, but we also need to prevent too shallow of a slope. So the language proposed is nor shallower than a 5-foot horizontal to a 1-foot vertical slope. So we've put goalposts around the parameters for those slopes. In addition, we've suggested an edit to 507E2A to change the required change that fill placed within the top of bank of channels that are wider than 10 feet, that no fill would be allowed within 15 feet from the top of that bank. The current standard is 10 feet. That is based on further discussion with staff and the local engineer.
All right, any comments?
All right, so on C1, the way it's written with the or, knowing the propensity of some people who come before this commission when they're trying to get things approved to interpret an or the way we typically interpret ors in legal, one possible way to read that section is average fill shall not exceed 36 inches throughout the development or on any individual lot within the development. I could make an argument that an interpretation of that would allow more than 36 inches on one lot as long as you're not doing 36 inches average throughout the development, or a higher 36 inches throughout the development as long as you're not doing more than 36 inches on one lot. Was that the intent, or was the intent to say you can not to prevent you from doing more than an average of 36 inches and also not doing more than 36 inches on one lot.
The latter is the case, and I appreciate your drafting mechanics there. So I would propose we remove the or, replace it with and shall not exceed 36 inches on any individual lot within the development. That was the intent.
Okay, then that would be, at the appropriate time, I'll make the motion to amend this as he just said, to put the language. Thank you. That was my only comment.
Anybody else? Do you have a motion?
Yeah, so I'll make a motion to recommend item 12B3, section 1707.
Wait. Start over again. You need to have your mic on.
I didn't realize.
There you go.
Is it on? Okay. Make a motion to recommend for approval to the council, item 12B3, section 17-507, placement of fill as amended in the errata sheet with the additional amendment so that section C1 shall say, have the wording that Tarek used when he said it earlier. Can you get that? Or
Take the word or, replace it with the word and.
with and? I think there were a couple extra other words. I think it was something, average fill shall not exceed 36 inches throughout the development and shall not exceed 36 inches on any individual lot within the development, is I believe what he said. So that's the motion.
Do I have a second? Motion by Commissioner Chason, and do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Next item, item number 12B4, section 17502, stormwater conveying systems.
Thank you, Chairman. This is a relatively short section of your current ordinance, but we did make a lot of changes, fairly minor in the grand scheme of things. One is that we have clarified that conveyance systems require compliance with design criteria and review and approval by the parish engineer prior to constructing or altering such systems. It's a simple paragraph to add, but will make the world of a difference to make sure that existing drainage features are not being modified without the parish knowing about that. We also added a new paragraph requiring conveyance to be directed to a primary on-site system or detention pond or facility, any detention facility, not otherwise directed to adjacent property. I know you struggle with a lot of those issues with new and existing developments, and so we have added that paragraph. No other major changes made, but there are some additional suggested edits per the errata. To paragraph A3, we are suggesting to clarify that new open ditch subdivisions are prohibited, but only for subdivisions where the lots are smaller than 1 acre. For paragraph A4, clarifying that sewage standards that would apply to subdivisions only where lots are smaller than 1 acre. And then we have suggested deleting paragraph 7, which is confusing language, does not match current Ascension Parish practice, and is better addressed in the sewer ordinance rather than here under stormwater conveyance systems.
Okey-doke. Any questions, comments?
I'll make a motion to.
Oh, just turned it off. There you go.
I make a motion to recommend item 12B4, section 17-5012, stormwater conveyance systems for approval to the parish council as amended in the errata sheet.
Do I have a second? Okay, I have a motion by Commissioner Chason, second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 12B5, section 17503, design criteria.
Thank you, Chairman. Several new changes to discuss with this one. The main bulk of the changes that you see in your packet were carried over from the previous section 17-4045 drainage design and construction criteria. Remember earlier tonight, I mentioned that you had design criteria in 2 locations in your ULDC. We've combined them here. These are the design criteria for drainage. Some of the changes here reflect what we just discussed with the 50-year design in lieu of the 25-year design, and insert 50-year rainfall has been addressed by the errata here. And then I'll just go in order before I get to the errata, sorry. We've also required detention facilities to be designed to the 50-year. We've required outflow to be limited to 10% reduced. That was the pre-development conditions. And then this is where we have revised the natural drainage requirement within a subdivision to be followed to the maximum extent practicable instead of in as far as economically feasible. So think back to that earlier definition that is now a critical step in improving this regulation. For the errata, we have suggested a revision to paragraph 5013A to insert 11.1 inches instead of insert 50-year rainfall. And paragraph E to revise to remove the reference to metal pipes, which are actually no longer even allowed and accepted by the parish. So we have suggested that change as well.
Okay, any comments or motions?
Motion to recommend approval of item 12B5, section 17-5013, design criteria for approval to the parish council as amended in the errata sheet.
Second by Commissioner motion by Commissioner Chason, second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Item 12B6, section 175014, drainage servitudes.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, need to scroll to that page here. This section was modified to include the servitude design requirements from the current subdivision regulations in 17-4045, drainage design and construction criteria. In section E.9, privately owned and maintained stormwater detention facilities were exempted from the servitude dedication requirement. We have more explicitly prohibited and required mitigation for any encroachments into a drainage servitude. We have revised that exemption again for privately owned and maintained stormwater ponds and lakes from the 30-foot servitude requirement from the inlet to the outlet of that pond or lake. In addition, we have an errata suggestion, and that would be 5014 paragraph E sub 2, to revise that paragraph from right now, you're required to have a 10-foot distance for the servitude from the top of that, the ditch or canal on each side from the bank. Currently, you have to have 10 feet. We've suggested a 15-foot distance from the top of bank based on staff's recommendation and engineer's recommendation.
I just have one question on paragraph E9. So you have a privately owned and maintained stormwater pond, lakes that have a discharge, okay? If you don't require a servitude of that that's granted to the entity that owns it, what is to ensure that that will continue to be operational in the future? I mean, wouldn't it be smarter to require that servitude, but that it be granted to the entity that's going to own that privately owned stormwater pond, lake, or other? So that way you know that that system is going to be protected.
Do I understand you're saying that it should be granted to the entity that's going to be, that would in and of itself be a private entity though, would it not?
Correct. But the private entity is usually an HOA, right? Or it's a homeowners association or something like that. And, you know, if I have a, I use my son's former home. There was a drainage pipes that went along the side of his house. Okay. that servitude is dedicated to the HOA. They're responsible for maintaining that, okay? That servitude isn't in place. What's keeping him from, paving the patio and doing something on that side yard and impeding the flow of water? The transmission of water, that part of the drainage system is no longer protected by a servitude. I mean, the servitude serves two purposes. One, it puts future owners on notice that that property is encumbered for the benefit of the community, and whether the servitude is granted to a public entity or to a private entity, wouldn't the servitude need to be there?
Let me jump in real quick. So this is only the servitude that's inside the pond from the inlet to the outlet. This isn't the servitude outside the pond that's getting water to it or getting the water out of it. This is just that hidden invisible line that connects the inlet to the outlet. And on a private pond, that's not necessarily because it's theirs. We don't need a servitude to get in there and cure something in the future.
From the inlet to the, okay, all right, okay, that explains it. Okay, I'm good with that.
And they're all private.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
Anybody else have any questions? No. Okay, do I have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to
I have a motion by Commission Chairman. I'm going to assume that it includes with the amendments of the errata.
Yes.
Right.
Second.
And we have a second by Commissioner Schick-Snyder. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries.
That's true.
Item number 12B7, implementation of September 2019 changes. May I be so bold as to say, can I have a motion?
A motion.
We have a motion by Commissioner Chason,
Second.
second by Commissioner Furman. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes. Okay, now, we have the new item, section 17506.2, Wetland Preservation.
Sorry, I flubbed up my PowerPoint, and I'm not sure if you can still see it on your screen or not. Okay, good, you can.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Chairman. Wetland preservation. So this was not included in your initial packet, and so this is only subject to the errata sheet. This is a new section proposed, does not currently exist in your code. There's similar language in other parishes nearby, including Tangipahoa. This would be established to have minimum standards to protect the parish's jurisdictional wetlands according to the Corps of Engineers. It applies to any new developments exceeding 20 acres or 50 lots. It requires those lands within wetlands to be preserved as undeveloped stormwater management areas, and additionally requires 25-foot minimum with a 50-foot average undisturbed perimeter buffer zone along the edge of those undisturbed wetlands. In some instances, there is a provision here where unusual property topography exists, or there are some other unavoidable adverse impact issues with the site. The planning director does have the ability and the authority to issue a waiver from these standards. This new section was not included in the packet, but as you can imagine, avoiding wetlands from being developed does a lot of good in terms of protecting your overall ability to convey water throughout the parish and to detain and retain water throughout the parish.
Thank you very much. Any comments or motions or recommendations or discussions?
I'll make a motion to recommend approval.
Okay, you got your mic on.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval to the council.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Chason. We have a second by Commissioner Bernardo. Is that better? Getting close.
Every time you say whether you get it right or wrong.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. Okay, we need one more motion.
So moved.
We are now adjourned.